Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning into our program this afternoon. I'm Misa Jeffries. I'm Assistant Curator at CAM. And shortly, I'll be joined by Rachel Youn, one of the winners of the Great Rivers Biennial and whose exhibition Gather is currently on view at CAM. For those of you who maybe haven't heard of it, the Great Rivers Biennial is the long-standing CAM Awards program. Every other year, we open up a call for submissions from artists who live and work in the St. Louis region. And then we call upon 3 jurors to review the applications and to select the winners of the award. Each winner receives an unrestricted $20,000 honorarium and a solo exhibition at the museum. So this year, from a pool of over 80 competitive applications, Rachel, along with Tim Portlock and Khalil Robert Irving, were selected as our winners. After they were selected, I had the privilege of working with the artists over the past year on their exhibitions from start to finish. It was very exciting to get to see Rachel's proposal in particular evolve into this incredibly dynamic and exciting and ambitious installation. So in just a minute, I'm going to play a video walkthrough of Rachel's show, and you'll get to see what I mean by ambitious. The installation consists of over 40 kinetic sculptures, so 40 moving sculptures. They're made up of electric massagers that Rachel deconstructed and then rigged with artificial plants, so that when the machines are all turned on and the music is turned up, the plants are swinging, dancing, and kind of clumsily bumping into each other in what feels like a really fun and maybe a little bit of an awkward dance party. I think it's important to note that this exhibition was supposed to open in May, and Rachel had been working on the show for a year. But then, of course, the pandemic hit. We postponed the opening by 4 months. Everything changed, and the context and the resonance of this exhibition changed as well. Obviously, over the past 10 months, we've all been staying at home. We're not gathering together. We're not coming into contact with each other. So when you walk into this installation called Gather, and all of these sculptures are gathered together, they look animated, they look like people or couples kind of moving freely and dancing with each other. They're kind of like stand-ins or proxies for us and what we're not able to do right now. And it's just such a welcome experience, I think. The installation has really brought a lot of joy to people in a time when people are really in need of some joy in their lives. So if you haven't seen the show, please do come and visit. But for now, we will play this video walkthrough so you get a sense of it.
Hallelujah. Let us pray.
기도하겠습니다.
Father, in the name of Jesus,
아버지 예수님의 이름으로 기도드립니다.
the most anointed name,
예수님 가장 놀랍게 기름 부음을 받으시고
the most exalted name,
예수 이름은 가장 높임을 받으신 이름입니다.
the name above the earth,
그 이름은 모든 이름 위에 뛰어난 이름입니다.
the name above all names.
모든 이름 위에 뛰어난 이름입니다.
Father, be glorified here today.
오늘 이곳에서 그 이름으로 부름을 받으시고 영광을 받으시옵소서.
In the mighty name of Jesus.
능력의 이름 예수 이름으로 기도드립니다.
Lord, as I speak to your people,
주님 오늘 주의 백성들에게 말씀을 전합니다.
please open their spiritual ears
저들의 듣는 귀를 열어주시옵소서.
and their spiritual eyes,
저들의 영적인 눈을 열어주시옵소서.
that they may hear this
그래서 이 말씀을 듣게 하시옵소서.
and see this
그리고 이 말씀을 보게 하시옵소서.
in the mighty name of Jesus.
저는 예수님의 이름으로 기도드립니다.
Amen. Hallelujah.
So before I bring Rachel on, I wanted to give a couple of biographical notes on the artist. Rachel Youn was born in 1994 in Abington, Pennsylvania. Their solo exhibitions have taken place at Monaco and Erica Pop Studios and Gallery in St. Louis, as well as Porch House in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Rachel is a recipient of the Regional Arts Commission Artist Support Grant and the Vermont Studio Center Fellowship. They received a BFA from the Sandbox School at Washington University in St. Louis in 2017. So I'm going to turn it over to Rachel. They're going to speak for about 25 minutes, and we encourage you to send in your questions through the Q&A box throughout, and I'll help field those inquiries to the artist. I also want to say that after we finish the Q&A section of our program, we're going to play a couple of tracks by the St. Louis band Godsbod, who's featured in the audio of Rachel's installation. So I'll explain a little bit more about the band when we get there, but for now, I will turn it over to Rachel. Thank you for being here, Rachel.
Yeah, thanks so much, Misa, and thanks to everybody for, I guess, like taking time on like a Friday evening to be on Zoom. I know that a lot of us are like completely zoomed out from our lives, so I appreciate it. It's weird doing webinars because I can't see like people's faces, but I'll figure it out. But anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Perfect. So I wanted to go ahead and I guess like show other work that I've made and kind of the progression of my pieces as it led up to the Great Rivers Biennial, because I definitely like did not start by like making immersive installations with like moving massagers. So maybe I can kind of illuminate how I even got to this stage. Yeah, I guess things kind of started off in my last year of school. I did my BFA at Washington University here in St. Louis in 2017. And the body of work I was making was really based around soft sculpture. And I was thinking about kind of artifice and surface. At this point, like there was this trend of everything being like marble print, like phone cases or like kitchen countertop veneers. There's this kind of obsession with this really obdurate material commonly used in a lot of Western architecture. So I was kind of interested in that kind of the way people were shortcutting that surface. So I made these pieces of furniture that were all surface and no structure, and then were kind of falling over and melting on the floor. So I show this work because while it's not moving, there's still kind of this performative or like very character-y feeling to them. I really love when objects have personalities to them, like everyday objects, or like, sometimes things have faces or things slump over in a way that's kind of funny. I also incorporated a lot of video into my work early on. So I was making these sculptures, but also doing sort of like kind of performative videos where I was activating them. So I'll play a short clip from this. And like, obviously, like nothing worked. So in this work, I was thinking about, I guess, I don't know, like that frustrating feeling of like when nothing around you works, or like, I don't know, I characterize it with when people are in infomercials and like things are just falling, or they're squeezing it out of their arms. And it's kind of comical, but also like really tragic at the same time. Definitely took some influence from like slapstick comedy. So moving on, after I graduated, this is kind of like my signature piece for a while, was this slumped over column, which is cast from an actual freestanding column that was about 6 feet long. Very much like the furniture, it was, I don't know, it really took on a personality of its own, and that kind of came through the process of making it, but also handling it as a piece. I was often like, when I transported it to shows, like I was like hoisting it up and dragging it over my shoulder, and it was just like this, basically like this like limp body. I was kind of poking fun again at like tropes of Western art and architecture, how we as a culture like have this really, we're like a really proud nation in our identity, but a lot of our visual culture is based on others as well. So I was thinking of, like the architecture of the Supreme Court or the White House. and then kind of turning it on its head and making this like very flaccid, like sad version of that. So you can see it here, and then on the right, you can see it while it was being constructed in the studio. It's made with silicone, but it's like silicone caulk, which is like a household material. And if you've ever used it, it smells really vinegary and like very strong. So I apologize to my studio mates at that time. Similar to the furniture, I also did a video, which I see that Marina Peng is here. She actually filmed this for me, so thank you, Marina. She bared with me and followed me around downtown St. Louis while I carried the column, and then got to see some really kind of funny reactions from people. So I'm going to go ahead and play a short clip from that too. So the column and I like walked around and looked at other neoclassical columns together, which seemed to like really upset the one I was carrying because it would just like fall over. Marina can attest to this, but we we got a lot of funny reactions. Like some people would like see the column like slumped over and they were like, oh my God, it's broken. And at the time that we were wrapping up filming, there was a Cardinals game that had let out. So a bunch of like pretty buzzed people were like walking through the streets around Busch Stadium. And this like kind of like bigger guy from like across the street who was like really red-faced at the time, like saw us carrying the column and laughed. He was like, ha, that looks really funny. So it was really kind of like delightful to get that response from somebody who had like, you know, no idea like what kind of like performance or video work I was doing. So I also was making other soft sculpture too. Silicone was a great material for me because of its kind of like skin-like or body-like quality. So this is a folding screen that I made, kind of poking fun at like kind of oriental aesthetic objects or pieces of furniture that people might have in their homes. This also kind of translated to still objects too. And I'm really into this idea of material or object betrayal. Again, like that sense where like objects like aren't listening to you or misbehaving. So this was based around a coffee table that was like arching up onto the wall. It was called Bad Boy because it was based on my dog that I had growing up, and my parents, like whenever he had to like go out to pee, he would like get up and like scratch the door, and my parents like really hated that. And so I kind of wanted to create that same effect, and it ended up kind of looking like the footrest from Beauty and the Beast, if you have seen that movie. So then things kind of took a turn in my practice, and what happened was that I just was thinking of, you know, I wanted my work to be more animated, and I wanted my work to move. And I was like, okay, Rachel, like you studied art, you know nothing about mechanical engineering or motors or anything like that. And so I decided like I need to like appropriate a motor. I need to find one that works for me. And that started with massagers because they're these kind of slow moving pieces. And so I got on Facebook Marketplace, I got on Craigslist, and you know, sent out an inquiry, and then drove out, you know, 25 minutes out into West County to a random suburb and picked it up. And I made my first piece where I don't know, I stuck bamboo poles onto one. And you know, then something started to click, like they were kind of like dancing or showing off a little bit. And I love that personality that the work was showing. I also did the same with another massager, and this time attached palm leaves to it. And these were fun because the stems were a little bit more limp. They kind of fought and attacked each other, and sometimes we get really violently twisted together. I called it Two Young Men Fanning Senior Woman with Palm Fronds by Pool, which is like based off of a stock photo that I found of like these like two young, like really buff, like really tan dudes like fanning this senior woman who was like lounging by the pool. And so I also kind of liked that the objects started to become like people, or even I don't know, like surrogates for human touch and experience. And I thought a lot about how massagers are in themselves, supposed to emulate somebody pressing their fingers into your neck or your back or your feet. And there's this kind of level of warmth and servitude. Um, and I found it endearing and sad that, there are these plastic, $50 massagers or whatever that people bought to bring themselves comfort and warmth. And then they were eventually sold off to me because they probably at some point didn't fulfill that function. Um, so yeah, this is another massager, or it's less of like a massager and more of like a thing you put your legs on when you lie on the floor, and it like stretches your back. I don't really know. There's also some weird kind of like pseudoscience, pseudo medicine, there's pseudo medical like language around these. A lot of massagers use the term like shiatsu or zen or chi, which has interesting associations with Eastern cultures. So this one I called poolside because it reminded me of, somebody fanning a person by the pool. But they also kind of became weirdly like suggestive and a little naughty. So yeah, that's the work doing it though. So moving on, I wanted to just also show a little bit of different experiments I was working with. I went to Vermont Studio Center in May last year and continued to just source massagers from around the Vermont area, driving, up to an hour away, meeting somebody in like a very rural place and purchasing them their massager and leaving. So I was playing with attaching different kinds of plants, positioning them together. This is kind of a vibrating or pulsating massager that I stuck like actual tree trimmings onto, which then died very fast. So I did not continue on with that. This is a different video of a piece. It was actually, they're like leg compression massagers. Like it's this thing you wrap around your legs and they inflate with air in different pockets. And it's supposed to kind of compress and massage your legs after like a long day of work. So I created these like silicone rock forms. This video is a little bit sped up to kind of show the effect a little bit better. But the rocks basically kind of breathe and move. So yeah, I guess moving on, here are a couple more massager pieces that I was making. Again, mostly kind of staging them with one or two at a time. I still kind of saw them as more singular sculptures. So this is Devotee, which is actually in the cam show. So you might see it sweeping some flowers. And then this is adulators, which is olive branches that kind of, I don't know, they like get caught in a way where they're kind of tenderly kissing and swaying. And then this next piece was installed for the Terrain Biennial in Springfield, Illinois, in which I was given this like storefront space to use. And so I had this piece is also in the cam show. It's kind of the big swinging palm plant. But I had actually used a motion sensor with this one. so that it would activate whenever a person or a car passed by. And I like this idea of this plant, like this giant plant, almost like a storefront display, kind of beckoning to you as you pass by it. This one is actually built off of a sine waving motor, because like the people who like stand on like the sidewalk and they like are like Subway sandwiches over here. You can buy a machine and attach it to a mannequin and just have like a robot do it, which is super creepy. So I like that it was like really excited to see you. It definitely scared a lot of people. Don't expect things like that to move. So then Great Rivers Biennial happened. I was actually on my drive back from Vermont when I learned that I was one of the finalists, selected to do a studio visit with Christopher Jose and Amanda Ross Ho. It was a wonderful conversation about the work. They were really gracious with their time and their questions. So much that I kind of lost track of like why I was even talking to them about the work. They had left and I was like, oh my God, wait, that was like a really important studio visit. But yeah, it was interesting because my studio is at the Bermuda Project space in Ferguson. And I have the benefit and the privilege of working within a large gallery space when we don't have an exhibition up. So at this point, I was able to kind of stage my work in relationship to each other. Like I'd mentioned before, the massagers had always been kind of singular pieces, but in this space together, I could kind of start to form relationships between each of the massagers. Each of the pieces started to take on their own personalities when placed next to each other. And I had this idea that I wanted to create some sort of pathway that greeted the viewer when they came through, and that I would have all these pieces be like a cast of characters. That was at the proposal stage, and there was a lot of stuff about the proposal that like changed over the year that I was working on the show. But yeah, so this is like the final results. And I appreciate anybody here who has taken the time to check out the show. And thank you, Dusty Kessler, for the amazing photos. It is a crazy plant party with amazing music by the local band Godsbod. Having the honorarium from the Gateway Foundation and from CAM really allowed me to collaborate with others in a way that I wouldn't have normally. I got to work with Kevin Harris, who really helped me figure out how to wire like 50 massagers to each other without like blowing the power out. And I'm glad to say we haven't done that yet. But yeah, with Godsbod, their local band, two of the members actually are part of CAM's install team. So it was really kind of this intimate process of working with them on the music and then actually getting to play the music in the space and hear it. So these, the sculptures are elevated onto these pedestals that are actually old speakers that I had also collected through driving everywhere around St. Louis. And some of them, they're really meant to elevate the sculptures off the floor, but a lot of them are actually playing music out of them. The surrounding speakers are playing the kind of mixtape by Godsbod, and then the central island actually plays a Korean, like an audio track of Korean church services from different YouTube recordings. So I'll get into that into a little bit, but I wanted to also show I don't know, like the process of getting ready for this show, because it, it's this kind of crazy production, but it definitely did not start that way in my mind. I guess I had more of this like white gallery cube space idea in my head. And that was really a benefit of having a whole year to work on this show, was really letting the work do what it needed to do. But anyway, first off, I wanted to show like what my studio looked like, which again was just collecting a lot of massagers. Everything was sourced secondhand from the St. Louis and Great Rivers area. my practice became half like making stuff in the studio and then half driving, doing, long several hour drives, doing multiple stops, really everywhere. And I learned that you can plot map points from like an Excel spreadsheet. And because I was keeping track of everywhere I was going, I got to make this map for this presentation. But I just wanted to show like everywhere I picked up from. It's kind of crazy. I went like as far south as Barnhart, out to Wentzville, also into Illinois as well. So definitely put a lot of miles on my car doing this show, but I really enjoyed using this opportunity to also get to know more about St. Louis and the region, because I think, I live in the city, and there's this tendency to only, stay around where I live. But it really kind of got me out into the suburbs, to just, I don't know, see where other people in the region live. A lot of, pre-COVID, when I actually could meet sellers face to face, a lot of them were really generous with their time and, would chat with me or share some stories about either the massager, less so the massagers, more so the speakers. So a lot of them they had inherited from their parents, and they were putting their parents into assisted living and, had to get rid of all their stuff. And so, I actually would tell them, like this is going into an exhibition at the art museum. And I've since reached out to everybody that I bought from and told them about the show, and a lot of them seem to be interested in coming. So I don't know, I thought of the show as an interesting way of like bringing all these people from this region to see art at CAM. But anyway, more images of the mess that my studio was. It was an incredible tangle of wires, if you can imagine. Somehow did not blow the power out at my studio either. But yeah, again, having this year to kind of position all these pieces, having a gallery space that was comparable in size to the gallery space I was working with really helped me set things up in real time and figure out exactly how I wanted them to look. So I was often working in my studio, like creating the pieces, sticking plants onto massagers, and then I would bring them out to the gallery and run them for a while to kind of get a sense of how they act. Some of them really misbehave and swing into others. You might notice that every time you go back to the show, something's a little bit different, and that's because due to the nature of these massagers constantly moving and having these plastic plants on them, they're like deteriorating over time. Some of the massagers have completely died and been replaced. A lot of flowers have like completely lost all of, the plastic flowers on them. Once in a while, like another massager will like pick up the flower off of another one, and I'll be looking for it on the floor, and I'll like realize it's like in the tangles of another plant. So it's funny because I'm experiencing this feeling of frustration with these sculptures. Like they're betraying my expectations and what I want, even though I'm kind of letting them do their thing and dance. Yeah, and then this is where I was starting to mock things up with the speaker cabinets, kind of creating more of like an undulating landscape rather than everything being on the floor. But a really important process that like I wouldn't have had the opportunity to figure out unless I had this time was really the music. And this just happened by chance. I was working on stuff in my studio, and my partner and my studio mate, Ryan, was playing music. Like he plays guitar and he's an amp there, and he was just playing. And my massagers were running. And then we kind of had this moment, we were looking at the pieces and we were like, this has to have music. Which was like a scary realization for me because I never worked with sound in that capacity. But I just wanted to play the moment that like things kind of all clicked together. yeah, anyway, I was super, again, like kind of terrified because this was like new territory for me. But it was also really exciting because I knew that if I had created exactly the installation that I had seen in my head in my proposal, I would have been a little bit disappointed. And so it was crazy when it just like blossomed, like quite literally into this colorful installation. So the next, you know, step was obviously to get a disco ball, which I went to Guitar Center, and they have this room where they have all of their crazy DJ lights and stuff playing. So, you know, I set up a disco ball in the studio, turned all the lights off, got some colored lights, which is really fun, and started to play around with the actual atmosphere of the installation. At that time, my studio mate Ryan and I were also, it's weird to admit this, but using the studio as our personal indoor roller hockey rink, because we both rollerblade and we were just going crazy. There's tons of like there were a lot of skid marks in the studio, and we had to eventually paint over them, which was bad. But I don't know, it kind of is indicative of just like the atmosphere of play that we had going on. And of course, with the disco ball and the lights, it really felt like a disco, like a party. I'll play. This is Ryan filming. I was playing disco music. That's me being really dorky. But yeah, this is like what the studio looked like for a while, which was really, really fun. And then came the second sound component. So I knew I wanted, you know, this dancey music, and I had started to work with Jamie and Amelia and Godspod to create the track. But there's this interesting kind of moment of observation with the work where, you know, I was thinking about how these plants are dancing kind of joyfully, but they were also in a lot of ways kind of like thrashing and writhing, and were actually quite violent. Again, they beat each other up and stuff like that. And I kind of started to see parallels to the way that I had been raised in the church. So my dad's a pastor, and I was always raised super religiously. And my dad is a Baptist slash like almost like Pentecostal pastor. And in those church services, they're very quite emotional. And I grew up with these services where we would lower the lights and play music really loudly, and people would cry and pray out to God and like shake their fists and like clap, and like, you know, like people would literally be like crying. And it almost kind of had the same feeling that this show did. And so I decided to also integrate Korean church music, because I wanted the two sounds to kind of almost like compete, or like one to like ooze into the other. And kind of make more of an ambiguous space. Like obviously it's still kind of very colorful and sensational. But you know, I think it's been interesting having so many different people come through this show. Some people really pick up on like the happy dance music. Some people really hear the religious music more so. But I just, you know, it really got me thinking about the way that, you know, different people use their bodies kind of really emotionally and enthusiastically to, I don't know, to kind of liberate themselves and their feelings. Like there's this idea that you can liberate yourself on the dance floor amongst other people and warm bodies, but you can also do the same in church, or you can do the same in like a mosh pit at a rock concert, or in a, you know, basement house party. And so I like to find that kind of commonality, because I like to think that maybe, you know, these groups of people aren't like super different. So yeah, so then, you know, I started playing religious music. And unfortunately, because of the pandemic, I would have wanted to go to my dad's church and actually do recordings there. Didn't have the opportunity to. So yeah, sometimes they kind of like, I don't know, they kind of clapped the music. It just works out in a weird way. So yeah, so that brings me to the end of my presentation. I know I'm a little bit over, so sorry about that, but I wanted to open it up for questions. And I know that we're also going to play Godspod's music. But I also wanted to show that the link here will take you to their page. They also have some really amazing ASL interpretation videos of their music, which is something like totally new to me and amazing. So I just wanted to thank everybody at CAM and Godspod for making this happen. So yeah, I'm gonna quit screen sharing now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rachel. I have lots of questions for you, but I see a couple of questions already here in the Q&A. So why don't we just jump in if you don't mind? We've got our first question says, well, thank you for sharing about your work. I noticed that many of the plastic plants you employ in your practice are tropical. Is there any significance to the type of plastic plants used? Do you select plants with particular connotations, historical context, or social or medicinal purposes?
That's a great question, and thank you, Heather, for that. I originally had planned the installation to be only palms because I was thinking about the viewer's approach to the work, and I was actually kind of more explicitly referencing when Jesus in the Bible like enters Jerusalem and people are like fanning him with palms, and so I kind of wanted to give the viewer that experience. Of course, then like the whole dance party thing kind of happened and things changed course. I don't know, I love the aesthetic of tropical plants. I don't have like a super deep meaning behind a lot of them. But I will say that a lot of the plants I chose were kind of influenced by my grandmother, who like really loves floral arrangements and has a bunch of photos where she would like make like 3-year-old me like stand in front of like, you know, her interesting like very tropical flower arrangements. And so I think I was kind of thinking about her whenever I go to her house. She has lots of like orchid plants. And now that I'm like an adult, I actually send her like a bouquet of tropical flowers every once in a while. So yeah, that was kind of the purpose. I just knew I wanted to avoid like certain flowers. Like I didn't want it to feel like a wedding necessarily. But yeah.
Just to kind of add on to that, I don't know, just a curiosity of mine, because I feel like some of your earlier sculptures that were kinetic weren't always necessarily two plants within the same sculpture. And I don't think it's true of every sculpture in the installation at CAM that there's always a pair. But can you kind of talk about why a majority, I would say, of them happen to be pairs? Was it, I mean, there are certain things you can imply about like couples dancing together, but yeah, I'd just be curious to hear your thinking about individual versus couples.
Yeah, that's definitely something I was thinking about. A lot of that was just circumstance because usually massagers have like 2 knobs or 2 like rotating parts for like your feet or like around your neck. But I started thinking about that when I was pairing the flowers. Like a lot of the massagers are like the same flower, but a lot of them are different. Or there are some that have like 4 knobs. So it's like a group dance almost. And I like kind of playing with the associations of maybe, I don't know, like heteronormative plants or mixing things up a little bit. Or you know, again, like showing a group of people dancing, because there's just so many ways to experience dance, and some of them are a little bit more singular. And I really love seeing their personalities shine. Some of them are almost like kind of waltzing together. Some are just like really sloppy and are just like banging into each other. You know, there's that one that's kind of like sweeping on the floor, which I think is kind of a really funny, different one. So yeah, I was kind of playing with the plants and their personalities and the pairings too.
We have another question here. I wonder if the ephemeral quality, the massager stop working, etc., might be considered a legit aspect of the aesthetic, or do these pieces ideally want to persist in perpetuity?
Yeah, I've definitely been thinking about that. It was interesting going into the show. I wasn't sure exactly how to address everything dying or falling apart. I think for the sake of, you know, the show being kind of extended past like the original time frame and going from September to February, I knew that the pieces would have to last a little bit longer. And I did think it would be like a little bit sad if almost all of them were dead by the end. So I have this schedule where I go in and I like prune the garden and I like kind of, you know, put things back in their place, or I we'll replace some of the stems and like go to Michael's and like refresh the flowers. Um, but I don't know. I think there is a version of the work where they truly just run until they die and they dance until they die.
I wanted to ask you if, well, I'm waiting to see if anyone else has any questions, but I'll ask you a couple in the meantime. I would just be curious to hear your thoughts about like how the pandemic shifted your thinking, just because I mean, it hit right in the middle. Like I was saying in my intro, it's like we thought we were opening the show in May, you were ready to do that. And then there were 4 more months that we had to wait until the show was going to open. There was so much uncertainty and, worry that was happening during that time. But then it's like I said before, when we finally were able to open the museum and open your show, there was just so much that your installation brought to the museum and brought to people and to visitors, like this whole different understanding of the work in some ways. So I don't know, I'd just be curious to hear your thoughts and your reflections about anything that's shifted for you because of the pandemic.
Definitely. The work really did take on a totally new meaning through the pandemic. And actually, I titled the show after we had decided that we'd have to push it back, and gather kind of ended up just being such an apt description for what was going on in the show. I like that it almost was like kind of a soft suggestion, but also something like we're not like literally allowed to do by like law. And Yeah, I guess again, it's a work that is really completed by the viewer, and one that must be experienced. And I had a different idea of what it would be like when before COVID, where like people could all kind of gather in there like in large groups. I imagine the opening being this kind of like big, like crazy event. It wasn't like people really had to start experiencing it singularly or in small groups. But I kind of like that people then have like the whole room to themselves. I think a lot of people have expressed that they miss, spaces like that. Like I know people miss dance floors and clubs and just being around other people. So I like being able to like provide a space of relief and just kind of joy, because I think joy is such a thing we haven't really experienced this year, and also for people to feel like they're amongst a crowd without feeling like they're going to get sick, like they're just objects. They're harmless, really, or I don't know, some people have gotten swat by like a piece and I apologize for that, but besides the the light slapping, they're otherwise harmless. So it's kind of been a really beautiful, I guess, like evolution of the work, based on the circumstances now.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm just going to ask one more question before we go on to listen to a couple of audio tracks from Godspot. But I was curious actually about that process. Like, I wanted to know what sort of direction you gave to Godspot. Like, what did you have them over to your studio just, so they could see the work and get a sense of it? Were there, ideas or thoughts or feelings that you were hoping to portray through whatever they were going to make for you?
Yeah, it was a great process. Like I really I just met up with Jamie. We went to Caldi's, and I brought my laptop and I showed just like the mock-ups of the images of the show that I was working on. Like I was showing the colorful lights. I was like, I like kind of the disco vibe. I really kind of let them run with it the way that they wanted to, because they have such an awesome sound, and I know like close to zero things about music. I was like just gonna let it be. The only thing I did mention was that I didn't want it to be like a super specific genre. Like I didn't want it to like be disco music or like be pop music. I like that the tone of the music changes and undulates throughout the track. So that, I don't know, because again, I wanted this space to like be a little bit more ambiguous. And I like that they really nailed it.
That's great. Okay, well, we did get a couple more questions, so I feel like I want to address at least one of them here. Has your experience installing this work at CAM changed where you see your work going with this specific body or new future work? I guess just wondering kind of, what's going to happen with your practice moving forward?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it feels so crazy to do such a big installation like this that, you know, I kind of picture my work being more experiential. Like I don't see myself necessarily going back to just showing singular sculptures. Of course, then it everything becomes like a much more ambitious installation. Um, but yeah, I love you know, the colors, I love the sound, and I think there's potential to work with, you know, collaborate with other like musicians or like electrical engineers. I've also thought about, you know, using different kinds of motors or even using like wind power to move these pieces. I was in a car wash the other day, and you know, the car wash was like doing its thing and washing my car, and I was like, I have to get a hold of these, like, like somehow, like I need to do like a plant car wash or
Oh
something.
my
So
God. Yeah.
I
I love
have big plans now, and I'm super excited about it. I just have to figure out how to make it work. Slash, like, also to do with like this show at the end of this season. But I'll definitely have a lot of individual pieces. And yeah, I've already started to look at new motors and specifically like lawn decoration motors, like dancing Santas and like spooky like skeletons popping out from tombstones. So
That's great.
I don't know.
I love it. Okay, last question. Can you talk a bit about what it's been like to work with the other GRB winners?
Yeah, it's really wonderful. I, you know, have had the privilege of already knowing Khalil and Tim like in a professional capacity through WashU in the past. You know, truthfully, I think our shows are really distinct from each other. And, you know, it's not like we were like planning these themes around each other, but I think they really worked together super well. Like somehow like the progression of starting with Ebony's work, going to Khalil's, kind of having this really quiet moment with Tim's, and then hearing what sounds like a roller party, like, you know, like a roller skate party, like coming from another room, and then kind of ending with Ebony's really floral work, like just somehow was like amazing. So, you know, I think that was more just like a circumstance of like the people I was working with. But I'm really, really thrilled with how it all came together for the Great Rivers Biennial in total.
Well, I want to say thank you so much, Rachel, for sharing with us today. It's always really great to speak with you. And I wanted to share a couple of tracks by Godspot, like we've been talking about. We originally would have loved to have had them perform at the museum. If we were able to do that, it would have been so amazing, but maybe sometime in the future. But in the meantime, they sent this really incredible description of the band, and I wanted to just read it out loud to everyone. So, Godspot is a spiritual techno musical theater group started by 5 friends who decided to act on the delusional yet fashionable belief that anybody can be a star. They built a stage in the living room and called themselves Godspot. This is their first hit, Pumpkin Patch. So we're going to start with that track, and then we're going to play another one called Too Many Invites. So Rachel and I will stick around. We'll be in the Q&A to answer any questions. You know, we'll type the answers into you. But other than that, I think we're going to probably sign off right afterwards. So I'll just say thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And again, thank you to Rachel. And I hope that you enjoy this music.
Thank you all.
Can't keep up. I can't keep up. I need a shortcut. Look at that butt. Do you want to fuck? No! No time! Too many invites, too many invites. 7 fashion, 7 nights. 49 invites. 7 times 7. 7 times 7. Face coat and shading, iridescent pants, uppers and downers, sex down romance.
Caffeine facial, coffee colonic. I can't find my wallet. Vodka and tonic.
Rebel on my floorboards, rebel on my crotch. Lick it up, baby. Is it sugar free? Maybe. Is it sticky?
Too many invites, too many invites. What you need is a power basic. Power basic. Power basic.
Like an accessory?
I'm late for the gag.
Gems on my e-cig.
7 fashion, 7 nights, 49 invites. 7 times 7, 7 times 7.
Hello.
Hey, I haven't seen you at the gym for a while. Are you coming today? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'll be there.
So much daylight at the... Keep it trim, keep it strong, keep it long, keep it lean. Bodybuilder says the chain.
Guys, I gotta walk my dogs.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you again, Rachel, and have a wonderful weekend. Go to Cam soon, go see the show, and take care until then.
Bye, thank you.